Hello, everybody. Happy
Hello.
Juneteenth.
Hello.
Hi. Hi, and welcome back, everyone, to another Untitled Ladylike show. This is Friday, is a special Friday because it's our special Juneteenth episode. So happy Juneteenth for everyone who is watching. We're so happy that you're here. So, diving right in, y'all, let's get into Signal Boost, our first segment of the show today.
Yes.
Yes. Did we say that I was going to start?
We did.
I was doing so good. It was so professional.
You're doing great.
Firing through it.
Yeah, that was really smooth.
Okay. We're back in it. And here we go. Okay, so for my Signal Boost today, I would like to bring everyone's attention to this beautiful organization called Therapy for Black Girls. It's started by a woman named Joy Harden Bradford, and she's a fellow Atlanta gal. And it's just basically an organization that makes therapy and a lot of therapeutic resources, a lot of information that you learn about in therapy available to Black women, which I think is super important in this day and age. So yes, check it out. It's a great resource. It's a beautiful website, and she has a podcast. She's all out and about advocating for Black women and their mental health, which I think is awesome. So check it out.
Yay. Thanks, Deb.
Love that.
That's great.
Yeah. Who else? Who's
Very
next? I
necessary.
forgot the list.
Maybe Fred should go next.
Oh my gosh,
can
Fred,
go.
who do you want to boost?
Yes. Okay. So I have a couple of things that I want to chat about. So I guess I'll start with the podcast. So there's this podcast. Well, which one do you, Chantel, are
They're
you able
both
to pull
up.
up? Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, so I'll start with the podcast. There's this podcast called Natal on Spotify that I discovered when I was at the park, sitting on my blanket and enjoying my life. And it's pretty much it's a podcast that centers the birthing stories of Black and brown women specifically. It's kind of just like a docuseries, and she brings on different women of different backgrounds, different gender expression, different sexual orientations, and they just talk about their experience giving birth. And it's mainly just to highlight the fact that Black and brown women do get the short end of the stick when it comes to maternal health. And there is a lot of maternal, like death during childbirth with Black and brown women, just based on resources, access, being sort of left for dead in the healthcare system. So it's really an important and really eye-opening podcast. And then along with that, I wanted to highlight an organization called Black Mamas Matter Alliance. And they pretty much kind of in conjunction with what the podcast and the organization are not connected, but I just wanted to highlight both of them just so that you can get like a lot of really good in-depth information from the podcast, and then also a way to sort of contribute to the cause would be to go on Black Mamas Matter Alliance, and they pretty much take donations in order to make sure that Black and brown women who are pregnant are set up for success from the time they find out they're pregnant, even after birth, to make sure that they are thriving and able to just survive the situation and have a great experience as well. So those are my two things.
Those are great. So important.
Yeah.
Did you see there was a tweet that went viral this week about just a Black woman sharing her birth story about how she was sent home from the hospital with just Advil? And then everyone else started commenting underneath, talking about their experiences, and that's why it went like super viral this week.
No, I did not see that.
How fucking crazy. You brought life into this earth from a hole that's usually this big, and you just are given Advil.
I can't say that I'm surprised, but I haven't heard that. There's so many stories, and it's especially with Black and brown women who are poor and don't have money. Like there's so many things that happen. Like there's one example of like really quickly of a woman who she was living in a shelter, like a women's shelter. She gave birth, and then at the hospital they gave her birth control shot, the Depo-Provera shot, without her consent, because that's what they do for poor Black and brown women who give birth. They're just like, you don't need to have any more kids, so they just like will give them birth control. And then her body, of course, reacted poorly to it, and she didn't know why. And it's just like stuff like that is just like insane. So yes, if you can, like, take a listen to some of these episodes and donate if you can, or just share the information.
I'm gonna listen to that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So from the list, Kristen's next. Yes?
I'm not next. I have
Jen is next.
Oh, Jen is next.
I'm retired from this role.
You're fine. You're
Please
doing good.
accept my resignation from this role. Thank you.
You're doing great.
Yeah, you are doing great. Okay, hi. Hello, Franz. So I wanted to shout out a fund, a organization called at For the Girls. You can visit their Instagram at For the Girls, but girls is spelled GWORLS. So it's they're funds for basically like people that are housing insecure, specifically like Black trans people who like need money for rent. And right now also they are raising money for like Black trans people who were incarcerated after protesting. So basically it's like a bail fund as well. And it was founded by a community organizer named Asani York. And this person, they were basing it off of like in the Harlem Renaissance era, they used to do Black communities used to do rent parties. So they'd like cook for the guests, charge for the door. And then like basically like there'd be music, there'd be poetry. And so like this fund was kind of created as like a homage and like just a remembrance of like those parties. And so if you want to donate right now, like there's a lot of people that, especially Black trans folks, who are housing insecure. And so this fund just pays rent and it's like direct relief. And I put the link, if you go to their Instagram at For the Girls, they have like their link tree in their bio. So it like lays out all the funds that they have right now, because they have like, they've sort of split up where your money can go to. But I also put the link tree in my Instagram bio as well. So if you just like visit their page, or if you visit my page, like it'll link you directly and you can just like go down. But yeah, they're really cool and they would love support from everybody. So yeah, that's who I'm shouting out. It's Signal Boost. It's not shout out. We're Signal Boost. I love this show.
And I put that link to the link tree. It should be in the description already, as well as the link to Black Mamas Matter. Those should both be in the description on this thing that you're watching already. So yay!
Thanks, Chantel, being on top of the tech.
Love it.
So
should I go
Kristen?
next?
Oh, so it's not Kristen. Okay. Oh, so it's Chantel. Okay,
I was like, is she gonna say I'll go next?
I'm retired. Okay.
So I want to boost an organization called the Equal Justice Initiative, often abbreviated EJI. Their website is just eji.org, and it was founded by Bryan Stevenson. And so I believe he wrote the book that Just Mercy, the movie, is based on, because he's a lawyer.
Oh, cool. And
so just this, I wanted to read just kind of like a tidbit, like from just kind of like the work that they do. And so they work in a lot of different spaces, but their main space is to end just like the mass incarceration like epidemic of America. And so Mr. Stevenson and his staff have won reversals, relief, or release from prison for over 135 wrongly condemned prisoners on death row. And they won relief for hundreds of others wrongly convicted or unfairly sentenced. And so the work that they do is really, really important. And I mean, Bryan Stevenson has just been like a powerhouse in the space as well. And so I wanted to shout out Equal Justice Initiative. You can donate. They have a couple different, like I think they have a museum in Montgomery, Alabama. They have like different museums and memorials also. I think there's 2 in the US. But yeah, so I want to shout them out. You can follow them on Instagram as well. Go to their website, all the things, like even just reading about them and what they do is like education in and of itself. So yeah, that is the Equal Justice Initiative.
Just Mercy is a really good movie too.
Yes, I haven't watched yet. actually planning on watching this weekend after the Five Bloods.
Oh.
LOL.
It's
Kristen.
It's all the blinks.
I don't actually have one. I don't have one this week because I had a day and a half, but I have a really, really good one for next week, which you'll hear about next week.
Okay.
Hey.
I'm so glad that I was able to guide this segment into success.
Did a good job. I think we're always doing a good job always. We've never done anything wrong on this show ever.
Ever in our life.
Not once.
All right.
Okay, so our next segment is going to be Feelings Corner. And this is the segment where we all go around and just talk about what's on our hearts and what's on our minds, what's on our souls, how we're doing. So I guess I'm just gonna go around and pick people out. Is that fine? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's start with Jen. This week.
What's up, Fred? Feelings Corner. Honestly, this was like a decent week feelings wise. I felt like motivated at times, which like I think like, sometimes you go through periods where you're just like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. But this week I felt pretty motivated in like spurts where I felt like I was like being productive, and I was like, okay, like I like spent a lot of time reading this week, and I spent a lot of time like having like, I don't know, like I was like journaling and trying to like make out plans for myself in ways I can just like be like, I don't know, like a person who's functioning okay and also is like doing things that they need to do. There was a bit of a fall off towards as the week went on, which I think coincided with getting my period, which we discussed before the show, like a bunch of us on our period right now, which is just fun little things.
Little tidbit.
Yeah. Little tidbit, little information there. But yeah, no, I got my period recently, and I was like PMSing super hardcore. So feelings wise, it was all over the place, but there were periods this week where I felt productive at times, and I was like, that's kind of a change, which is good. But I don't know. We're all just gonna do our best to like just be functioning adults and be. Listen, I went to a really dark place like when I first got my period earlier. So I was just like, all right, now we're going to be a functioning human who's around, who's doing, focus on positive. So yeah, I think things are okay. But
Good.
that's just like my mental monologue, I guess. I go around in circles a lot, but I think it's okay.
I actually can kind of feel and sense that you're feeling a little better. Like I feel like
Really?
I'm getting like the vibe, the energy I'm getting from you is like a little bit more upbeat than previous weeks. So I can kind of feel that
Thanks,
you're in a
dude.
little bit. Yeah.
I always enjoy like talking to you guys. Honestly, like I really like Fridays are always fun because it's just like a guarantee of spending time with your friends, which is like pretty, it's not always something we get to do these days. So it is like always good to be here. And always fun to talk to y'all. Yeah, so that's always a highlight.
Well, we love you.
Mm-hmm.
Love you guys too. And I love Speedway Stout.
What is that? Is it so it's a coffee? It's the coffee? It's a coffee beer?
It's an imperial stout with coffee, which I didn't know when I got it. It's from else. It's like, I don't know, I guess it's NASCAR themed or like car themed. There's like signs on it. I'm not really sure.
Car
what is
themed
going on
stout.
Pixar's Cars.
It tastes like oil.
Like oil. I mean, it is like a very dark beer. So that it like, I don't know.
Does it make you do this? Does it make you do this?
A little bit, yeah. Actually,
What's that noise?
it's got a little bit of a kick
You
to
sound
it,
like Birdie. She's like,
Listen, it's not surprising because like obviously you spend a lot of time with Birdie. Like, of course you could do a good impression of her. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah.
is a stout like a thick beer?
Yes.
Watch us out. Here's the thing. As soon as you asked that question, it was like everybody look at Kristen for the answer.
Oh, it's a thick beer. It's a substantial beer. It's an adult beer. A beer for ladies and other adults.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Good to know.
Thanks, Jen. Devin, you want to go? How are you feeling?
Well, I also started my period yesterday, and wow, it was a hell of a kickoff. Do you ever have one of those periods that it's just like something happens, you become super emotional about it. That's your evening now. Now your evening is
That
He feels you. He gets it.
you understand.
He's agreeing.
Yeah, he's here. Sorry if you hear him in the background.
Never be sorry for
I'll
that.
let him speak for me. But anyway, yeah, I just had one of those period kickoffs it was just super a lot. And I had the thought about like
It's good. We can see his mouth too. Like we see the little pink mouth just going like.
this is my therapy session, Bones. All right, he's watching.
Baby. We're doing this an hour later, so it's almost like, is it their dinner time or something?
Well,
They're
I fed them
pissed.
a little bit beforehand, and I'm going to feed them a little bit after this too, as well. There's a whole strategy in place for winning cats because they are monsters at the heart of it all. Anyway, yeah, I feel like the period thing, having a period during this time is just so much. And I am incredibly privileged because like I have a safe home and I just have so much privilege. I can't imagine what periods hit like for others, during this time. It's just so, yeah. So I'm in period land right now. Chocolate, comfy blankets, crampies. I also have a lot of girlfriends who are having babies, and I feel like my cramps are even more intense now because my body knows that my girlfriends are having babies and I'm not having
Yeah, so they're
how's
trying
your
to push you to the limit.
my period? Like, how are y'all? Because like my period, they've been so bad.
they've been really bad.
Oh yeah, mine are bad. They've gotten the worst. They've gotten worse the older I've gotten.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Like go to the business sale.
Yeah.
Kristen,
our uteri are being like, hello, this thing on?
What's happening?
we work, bitch. Like, come on.
Yeah. Is your head the uterus and your hands are the ovaries?
Yeah. She's angry and she's chomping too. She's like, that's what it feels like.
I only have one ovary, so for me it's like
She's like, I'm making up for this.
Yeah, she's working overtime.
How have your periods been, Kristen? This is a good segue to you.
To you, yeah, Kristen.
me.
Yeah.
You also had your period yesterday.
So yeah, I started my period. Listen, I don't have periods very often, so when I do have them, it's like this is a semi-annual sale. It's like it's like awful. I don't know. I had a bad week. I had a bad brain week. I had a bad pain week. It just wasn't. Honestly, it's like I was thinking about how I wanted to like talk about my feelings today because I was like, I don't know if I want to talk about them because I feel like I'm gonna feel sad. So would it be okay if I spent my time talking about something that is annoying me right now that I have like a screed about?
Yes.
Talk about
By
it.
all means.
Okay. So I've been thinking a lot lately about how much time I spent in school learning about the minutia of Civil War battles and how it was pointless. Why do we all spend so much time learning about this? It's like when I was in Texas in a 7th grader, we did a unit on this book called The Killer Angels. It's like it's basically like Civil War fan fiction, and like we spent a month reading this book that was like written from the perspective of Confederate generals. It was like, oh, are you sad that Stonewall died and he's not here? You sad about your hardtack that you have to eat? It's a month learning. And like, the teacher I had at the time, she was also one of those people who was like, she had hair that was like a thundercloud. Like one of those vests was like the Texas symbol for my daughter wins Girl Scout awards for previously legal things. And like whenever we talk about the Civil War, she'd be like, it was about, well, whenever anyone talked about the Civil War, she'd be like, well, it was about states' rights, but we'll talk about that later. Like, it was always just like, it's like every time someone mentioned it, it was like, I have a secret, it's that I'm a bitch. And honestly, I'm so angry that we spend so much time humanizing people that don't need to be humanized.
Yeah.
Nothing is learned from this. No one learns how to read or process information better. And what happens is because we humanize these people, we like have a problem taking down statues of them because they're just like, oh, I also hate eating hardtack. I'm just like Jeb Stewart. It's like, no, you're not. Nothing is gained. Like, I mean, if you know, I suppose there's like a world of like obscure academia for people who want to like document everything that's ever happened, ever, fine. But like, there's, you know, you only get 13 years with these squishy little brains. Why would you spend so much time on something that doesn't promote any sort of brain development whatsoever?
Right.
Anyway, that's the thing I'm mad about today.
Yeah, we're humanizing the wrong people.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I was born in Stone Mountain, Georgia.
Oh yeah, the racist Mount Rushmore. Although like they're both the racist Mount Rushmore.
Are they gonna do anything to that? They need to like scrub the mountain face down.
Yeah, I mean it's like let's deface a mountain that we don't own, and then do laser light shows on it.
Off of it. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, no more monuments until we figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, literally.
Right here.
A halt on the monuments, please.
So we
Whenever someone's like, we're going to Stone Mountain, I'm like, great, so we're going to sit outside and we're going to look at some terrible people etched into a rock that we don't own.
And you're gonna bounce lasers off them so it looks like they're talking.
Yes. Yeah.
I've never heard Stone Mountain. That's like an
we'll have positive feelings about them.
So Stone Mountain is, for those who don't know, is a big white hill that Donald Glover, Kenneth from 30 Rock, and myself are all from. My dad coached basketball at Stone Mountain High School for a long time. And it is like just this, it's a town, and it's got this mountain with the Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee etched into the side of it. And it's not a good, it's a very, it has a dichotomy to it, because right now, a lot of the demographic of Stone Mountain is Black. It's a Black community. However, it was the origin point of the Ku Klux Klan back in the day. So it's just like such a charged place all around. And I don't know how they're going to take those faces down. Like, what, do you just take a drill? Do you just take like a exfoliator to the mountain face? Like what?
Just jackhammer.
Yeah, I don't know how you would like.
I don't need to learn. I don't need to be like
a wrecking ball.
Which do they have feelings like me? Like, like I don't care. Nothing gained comprehensively from it, and I feel like we should abolish all of that whole unit. We need to learn what you need to learn in order to understand how it impacts today. I don't need to know about like we digged a trench and then we sat in it with our old tin cans.
So right.
I would love if you at some point in your life pivoted to a historian and completely rewrote specifically Texas history books, because you also, for those who don't know, Kristen was a history tutor for a while, and so she's very well versed on all of these things. And I think that you would be, I would read a history book from you, just for fun in my backyard.
People need to know.
They
Right.
do.
Okay, I pop up now. Reading my inhaler
Okay.
now.
Chantel, how are you feeling this week?
This week I feel kind of the same as Jen, where I was kind of able to gain some of like the steam back for like the different like projects that I'm working on. But then also, much like Jen and Devin and Kristen, got my period yesterday, which is crazy. I don't know how all four of us got it on the same day. It's wild. But anyways, yeah. And so I've been I've been able to honestly, it's like I'm also trying to take myself back to like history class, you know? And so it's like, because same as you, Kristen, I'm like, why is it that I learned about Juneteenth 2 years ago from an episode of television? Meanwhile, I was in school for 15 years and I had never heard of it. I'm like, what? Like, why? I mean, we know why, but it's still, it's just like,
Yeah.
you know, and so it's like, now I'm like educating myself and I'm like, this should be the stuff that we're learning. Like this, it's like, you can't move on from something unless you acknowledge what was wrong about it. You know, it's like an apology. If you just say like, oh, I'm sorry you're feeling that way, that's not an apology. If you're saying, I'm sorry you're feeling that way, I know that what I did really hurt and I know that I caused that pain and here's why I want to do better in the future. Here's how I'm going to do better in the future. Then you're like, okay, I think they meant something by it. And now I will wait and see if they act on that, you know? But it's
Yeah.
like America hasn't even begun to go down that road. I just completely digressed. So I'm feeling but yeah, so I think I've just kind of like allowed myself to be both mad but also invigorated by the learning and just kind of being like, okay, how can I continue learning? How can I spread the knowledge that I'm learning? And then I also just had a good week in terms of people I've been having like conversations with. I think like some different people I've been talking to have kind of like rounded a corner in a good way. And so it's like that also is uplifting, you know, it's like everyone kind of like accepts new information in their own time, hopefully sooner rather than later, but they accept things in their own time. And so once you see kind of like how the new information is like impacting their life or changing their life, it can be it's good. You know, and so it's like that obviously makes me feel nice because I'm like, okay, this person is learning and growing just as I'm learning and growing, and so that is just something nice and something that's inspiring, because I've been trying to not baby people but meet them where they're at, because we're all starting at different places, you know more than I do. Kristen knows more than I do. You know, it's like we all have different levels of where we're at. And so I'm trying to like speak to those different levels. But yeah.
Can I ask you a question, Chantal, really fast? You've mentioned twice in both this episode and last week's episode about how you're having conversations with people, like tough conversations. And I'm assuming it's about race and like where people are.
Yeah.
Talk to me about like how you initiated these conversations and how you follow up with them, because you are so good in conflict management and you are so good at like coming at like conflict from a place of like non-combativeness.
Yeah.
And I'm a person who's like coming in hot all the time. So y'all know, like sometimes it's what you need to slice through the butter, right? You need someone to come in hot and fuck some shit up. Most of the time, you don't need that. So like, talk to me and everyone else who's watching about like how you initiate those conversations and also how you follow up on the, because in my mind, is it like a Chantel class that you're hosting on the phone with these individuals? Like, all right, last week we talked about this. We left off. Is that what it's like or what?
I mean, I will say I definitely kind of have my own sort of like in-head curriculum of like, oh, this person is kind of like at this level. So I feel like when I was at that level, I responded to X. So I'm going to then come in and talk to them about that. Or like, oh, this person feels this way about race, that way about race. Where was I when I thought those things, or where was I when I learned the opposite? And so it's like, it's kind of different with different people. So what I've been doing is honestly trying to like call out some people on Instagram, but very like indirectly, and posting things. So a lot of my kind of like older, not older in terms of age, but like old friends that I've had, they identify as Christian and are in a lot of like white spaces. And so it's like, even in the memes I'm posting more about like Christianity now than I ever have, but it's because I'm trying to reach those people. So it's like, okay, what's a Bible verse that can support being anti-racist? Like, what's a Bible verse that can support standing up for people that are oppressed? And so that's how I've been able to like get responses from the people that I want to be responding to me. And sometimes they'll start just with like the clapping emoji, and I'm like, then I'll literally respond and be like, I know, right? And then sometimes that'll be like, then they'll engage and be like, yeah, it's crazy. Like, I didn't know either. And I'm like, I know, there's so much that we don't know, And so it's like, sometimes that'll lead to a conversation, sometimes it won't. And that's also fine, because I'm like, okay, I know they're watching my stories. I know they're at the very least like reading, because you can tell if someone is at the beginning of your story and then they're in every single slide. It's like, it's because they're reading them. Otherwise they're just like flipping out of them, And so that's kind of one way that I do it. And then I've been able to like have more fuller conversations come out of that. Like, there's 3 different people that I've been engaging with just in my DMs, people that I've known like from that time in my life. And like one person, because her and I were talking, and I was like, have you seen 13th? I was like, that's a documentary that really sort of like, honestly, kind of like overturned everything that I had been taught about the justice system and about slavery, Jim Crow, war on drugs, and mass incarceration. It just like completely changed like my perspective on everything. And so I was like, hey, yeah, like, so we're gonna talk on Thursday. Like, have you seen 13th? Like, why don't you watch it like before we chat, And then she wound up having to reschedule. But so then this week I DM'd her, and I was like, she probably hadn't watched it, and I knew that, but I literally just DM'd her and being like, what did you think of 13th? And then she was like, oh my God, like I haven't watched it yet, but I need to, like, yeah, let me go watch that, So just kind of like, I feel like you have to put pressure, but very, very lightly, because people respond to different types of pressure. So it's like with her, I knew that if I was just like, hey, so what did you think of it? She would be like, I need to watch it, versus other, so that's just kind of like one approach that I've been taking. Or like I posted on Facebook, just being like, hey, 13th is like, it was nominated for 9 Emmys. It won 4. Like, tell me all what you thought. Like, what was your biggest takeaway after you watched it? And so just kind of like being at that, I'm like, I'm going to assume that you all have watched it. Tell me what you thought about it. Here's what I thought about it, and just like, because I feel like the people in my life really respond to like media more than anything. And I also don't want to be like taking up too much space. I'm like, here's what I think on this, And so I'm like, hey, watch this thing and tell me what you think about it. I'll talk to you about it. So that's kind of those are some little tactics that I've been taking.
That's a great idea. I feel like that's something I could be like, hey Dad, watch 13th.
Easy.
Yeah.
That's an easy, like there's no agenda there. And he like, he's married to someone who's like better now. So it's, he actually does his homework now. So
yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and I feel like we just, especially it's like I grew up in LA, and so I feel like me and the people that I grew up with kind of like respond differently to media, since it's like what the town is like built on. And so it's like, yeah, watch this thing. It won Emmys. It was nominated for this, for that, And so then they're like, oh my God, it must be good. And I'm like, yeah, it is really good. And it's not like 13th is like the end all be all by any means, but I just know that was a big catalyst for me. And so it's like watching that documentary then gave rise to be like, well, what else do I not know? And so then that's when I just started honestly consuming more media that can teach me. So it was a big catalyst for me. So that's why I've been like, what did you think of it?
Also, I like that following up, what did you think about it? Because then it's more of like, I'm interested in hearing your opinion.
Yeah.
Rather than being like, let me tell you about this. Because I think that's when people shut down.
Yeah.
Let's the older generation. That's when they shut down.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Thank-
that's
Wow.
something I've been doing.
I like
Great
this.
question, Dev. Yeah, that was a great question because I think a lot of people just they want to have these conversations, but they just don't even know the approach or how to um, even address them. Because I think in general, people have a way easier time like sharing opinions and thoughts and views and perspectives with strangers on the internet than they do with people that they know. Because they don't want to burn bridges or they don't want to make it weird or they, don't want to hurt feelings. And so I think it really is important in a very specific skill to be able to execute these conversations with people who are close to you because it is not always easy. So
Yeah.
But how
thanks,
about
ladies. Oh yeah, me.
Right, how are you gonna be like, no, 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 no.
I'm like, okay, ready to move on. So I actually have had a decent week as well. I was pretty busy with different like work projects. And so that has sort of kept me motivated and sort of kept the steam under me in terms of like making sure that I'm, using my platform for good and for education and that type of thing. Because I like I discussed a couple of weeks ago, I had taken a social media break. And so I probably will take another little mini one this weekend just because I do feel like I feel okay, but I still feel really tired mentally from just like the overload of information on the internet and also trying to put out some stuff too. So it's just like I'm gonna take, probably Saturday and Sunday, take a little break, and then come back on Monday with that heat. You feel me?
Just boobs
Oh, yeah.
But
out.
yeah, exactly.
I mean,
yeah. So I've just been and then I went to the Juneteenth celebration today in Leimert Park, which was really great. My first time really being around, you know, people since the pandemic started. So it was a little bit anxiety inducing in that way, but I'm really happy that I went and I'm happy that I was able to fellowship and just celebrate today with my people. So that was great. Um, yeah, I mean, I will say this week has been a better week than previous weeks as well. And I did not start my period. I had my period last week. So I feel a little
Well,
left
congrats
out,
to
but-
you for being ahead of the curve.
It means that Freddie's period is the alpha period, that we follow her.
Oh, I guess so, huh?
oh, that's pretty cool. I'm cool with that. I love to follow cool people, so great. Thank you, Fred. Thank you for taking charge of that.
You're really taking a leadership position.
I do what I can. I do what I can.
I also forgot, even though I was talking for like 30 minutes, I had a couple more points that I wanted to bring up. I think it's like something else that was kind of just sort of like recharging this week are the different wins that happen with LGBTQ protections and then also with DACA. And so I was just kind of like, okay, there are like changes still happening, and then also just trying to think even more critically about intersectionality because it's like it's all intertwined. But yeah, and so I was very happy about both of those.
Yeah, two huge wins this week with that. Like so good. And I think that it is important to still keep as many important issues at the forefront as possible. There is a lot happening, but when we have these amazing wins with DACA and LGBTQ, it's just like, try to continue to uplift all of these different groups as well. Because, even though, I think Black Lives Matter is at the center of the conversation right now, like DACA and the border and all of those, everything around immigration has been just like, in general, just an ongoing theme of justice, like the injustices happening around that since Trump got in office. So it's really important that we continue to uplift those groups as well. So yeah, thank you for bringing those up. So I'm going to segue out of this segment and we're going to go into our next segment and we're going to talk a little bit about Juneteenth.
Love that.
Yes.
We're ready.
So
Pulling
I
up my
guess
doc.
yeah, we have some notes. We have some notes that we just want to like hit really quickly about this holiday and what it stands for and why it matters. And then also sort of the implications of today and sort of, really where um, Black people's freedom stands today because we are still not free, but we will talk a little bit about that. Also, watch 13th and you'll also get another inside look about why we are still not free. But yeah, I guess Chantel, you want to sort of kick us off?
Yeah, so on your screens, you will see an infographic. And so this infographic made by Her Modern Life on Instagram. And so this is honestly just like a really great abbreviated timeline of things that happen. And I feel like that's kind of like a good place to start of like, okay, like what is it that we're talking about? And so I think we are just going to go through kind of like each of those bullet points and like just expand on them a little bit. And again, this is like a very brief oral history of this. Like this is not in by any means like comprehensive. There's like so much nuance and there's so much to learn about this. But we wanted to use this time because like we were saying, it's like I didn't know about Juneteenth until I started watching Blackish, and that's not okay. And so we need to be talking about it. It needs to be mainstream. It needs to be a national holiday. And here's why. So the first bullet point is 1619. The first group of enslaved Africans arrived at Point Comfort, Virginia. Fred, I don't know how you want to do this. If we want to like switch off bullet points or like I want you to be able to.
Yeah, we can totally switch off.
Okay.
And we don't even have to like expand super crazy on each one. We can sort of just go through and if we have stuff to add, we can add them in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But something I will say 1619 really fast. There's a great podcast by New York Times called 1619 that talks about sorry, that's me, the introduction of Black folk or African Americans into America. So it'll blow your mind. So I highly recommend 1619 because you brought it up. Continue.
Yeah, thanks, Dev.
I've been looking for new podcasts that are like super educational, clearly like natal. So I'm going to lean into 1619. I'm definitely gonna look that up. Thank you, Dev. So 1861, the American Civil War begins at Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Yikes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And then 1862, Abraham Lincoln issues the Emancipation Proclamation. And I think something that I was often taught in school, it's like, yeah, Lincoln was really nice. And so then he did this thing and he freed the slaves. And that's what it was. And it's like, it's politics. There's always an ulterior motive. People never do anything out of the niceness of their hearts. Mm-hmm. And so one thing that I want to like bring up with that, it's like he issued the Emancipation Proclamation because he wanted to destabilize the Confederacy. And something that I've been learning a lot about is like seeing slavery as economy. Like it was the economy of America. It wasn't just people being mean to other people. It was how the country was built. And so people were, and so everyone made their own lies as to why it was okay because they needed it in order to have what they wanted in America.
Yeah. And just to add to that, yes, economy. Like enslaved Africans brought in hundreds of billions of dollars into this country. So pretty much my ancestors, built this country. That is a lot of money, all of the crops, all of the goods, everything that all of the hard work that they were forced to put in to get all of these goods and so that we could trade and all these things to build up this economy was done by enslaved Africans that were brought over. So
yeah,
stolen. It was a war strategy. Yeah. It was a war strategy that Abraham Lincoln did this. It was not because he was a cool dude.
Not because he was just feeling nice one day.
Yeah.
A lot more to it than that. But yeah. Then or do you want to do the next bullet point, Fred?
Yes, sure. Let me take my little sip.
Uh-huh. Little hydration.
um, so 1863, is that where we are? Yes.
Yes.
The Emancipation Proclamation goes into effect, but it still took 2 years for all enslaved peoples to be freed for there are a variety of different reasons, or I guess I don't know the word I'm thinking of, but there are a couple of different reasons that people are saying that it took an extra 2 years for the last enslaved people to be freed from Galveston, Texas.
Mm-hmm. So
If
it's like,
you want to talk about those, yeah.
yeah. So it's like, imagine if you were like in prison, and then people on one side of the country, they were told that they were allowed to just walk free, and you didn't know for 2 years. And so then after 2 years, you find out because people ride into your town and they're like, hey, you're free. And so then you're free, but you have nothing. And so it's just then like, okay, be on your way. That's it, and of course, be on your way with, it's not that racism all of a sudden didn't exist. It's not that oppression all of a sudden didn't exist. But still they were given nothing and then freed.
Yeah, and I think too it's important to note, like, it was, I think, pretty strategic to sort of let the enslaved people know that they were able to be free, sort of when it was convenient for them to let them know that they were able to be free, right? Because we weren't allowed to read, like, I'm sure there were like notices going out. I'm sure it's in the paper, all of these things, but we weren't, we could get a hand or a finger cut off if we were caught reading or learning to read. So, we were really at the mercy of just them giving us the information when they felt like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, power just systematically taken away really at every turn.
Yeah.
And some reasons as to like maybe why it took 2 years for that information to make its way over to Texas. And it's like, we know the real reason is racism, obviously, but it's like some other sort of like reasons. It's like the sorry, I just like completely lost my train of thought. But one of the things is like that the plantation owners wanted to get one last crop in. They wanted to get one last cotton crop in. Also, Texas really didn't answer to Abraham Lincoln. They really didn't answer to anyone. And so then it was like by the time that the Union soldiers made their way over to Texas. And I guess I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but yeah, so we can go on to the next bullet point.
Where are we?
1865. You can just read both of those.
Okay. So the American Civil War ends at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. And then 1865, American slaves in Galveston, Texas are finally liberated. Texas had 250,000 enslaved people, 250,000 people still enslaved in one state. And also, like, when you think about it, like, Texas is huge. I mean, it is massive. So the fact that that's the state that continued to use African people as slaves, like, they probably had the most slaves, right? Probably.
I would imagine. I would imagine like per capita, because I think there was around like 3 million enslaved people in America.
They fought the Texas War for Independence was fought because Mexico abolished slavery and Texas didn't want to abolish slavery. And so they were like, we will fight for our independence to be fucking dicks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Even though we all think of that, like, not we all, but people in Texas are just like, the Great War for Independence. So yeah, their economy was very, very saturated.
Yeah. I mean,
I read something today that said that the American cowboy, we think of them as a white man, but most of the American cowboys in the height of like cowboy era were black men, because after slavery, they had to find a job, and which was on cattle ranches, which is just like, and the American cowboy is an iconic symbol of American identity. And now that you know that is a majority of black men, at a certain point in history really makes
Which
sense.
is, yeah. And then when you think of like, there's a whole sector or genre of media that surrounds westerns and the idea of cowboys, and really, the way that they're portrayed completely is like the opposite of what probably how it really even became a thing, which was with Black men working those jobs and those lines of work. So the fact that that's just another example of just erasure that media has done to Black people and sort of the roles that we played in our lives. So
Can I ask a quick question of the group?
yeah.
Obviously, like where some of us are talking about like when we learned about Juneteenth. And obviously we've kind of touched on today about how our history books, like I grew up in Georgia, so it was the War of Southern Succession. It wasn't the War of Civil War. You know what I mean? So like my question, I guess, is like, Fred, like what was Juneteenth for you growing up? And did you feel like a cognitive dissonance between like what you were learning in your history classes and what you knew personally from your like oral history to be true?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I think the only reason that I knew about Juneteenth was because my dad, so quick overview, like my dad is an audio engineer. So he does a lot of like sets up all the audio for live events, right? So if there's a concert, he's doing all the mic checks, like setting up all the sound, like doing all that stuff and just completely doing everything, like running the entire sound booth for these events. So Juneteenth was an event that happened in Richmond every year. And my dad, that was like his gig. Like that was like one of his main gigs that he like, because he would get commissioned to do different events like all the time, freelance life, that kind of thing. But Juneteenth, every year, that was my dad, right? So I would go with him to work in general, just a lot. And so that was really that was like, well, what is this? But to me, it was like a normal thing. And the fact that we didn't talk about it in school, but I was going every year, didn't really it didn't make a connection for me. I guess it was a little bit, honestly, maybe a little bit gaslighty. Like it was almost like, I guess this is just like a Black thing. Like I guess it's like not important enough for other people to talk about. You know what I mean? I was just like, okay.
Wow.
It just was like, I guess this is just like a niche thing. You know what I mean? So that's something that I, didn't really put two and two together. Because, when you're young, you're like, okay, well, it's school, so they must be right. And I'm wrong, and that's how, I'm sure, that's how all kids look at it. It's like, okay, well, this is school. Like, this is a government organization. So what they say must be correct, And so it wasn't until much later that I was like, wow, this is fucked up that this has not been brought up. But I was going and fully aware of like what it was as a kid.
Did you guys experience that? When did y'all learn about Juneteenth?
Nothing. I never even heard the word.
When I started tutoring, honestly, like 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
Yeah, after I gotten a master's degree, I'd gone through like how many years of school?
Yeah.
I knew about.
And I grew up in like Illinois, where like they kind of prided themselves on like a liberal education system, where they were like, we teach the real things, and it was sort of like there was a lot of, even in like a state that wasn't even a state during the Civil War, really, is like they basically were like, okay, there was a lot of like fetishizing of like the Confederacy and like all of that like minute details, and nothing of like Juneteenth Reconstruction, like any of that stuff. Yeah, it's not just the southern states, it's like basically just like pervasive across.
Yeah.
Like,
what's interesting is like I don't remember ever being taught sort of like idolization of the Confederacy or any of the Confederate soldiers. It's like we were always taught, it's like, yeah, Confederacy bad, Union good, but it's like even that is not as nuanced as it needs to be. And we never learned about like presidents that were slave owners, because it's like, well, that no, but George Washington, he's our president. He was the first one. He's a good guy,
Yeah.
And it's like, no. And so
I think we think of George Washington as like the first cast of SNL, and that like every subsequent cast after that is like, well, it's not as good as George Washington.
That's so true.
But remember that like the first cast of SNL also contained Chevy Chase, who sucks.
Also a very racist dude, so.
Yeah. I learned about Juneteenth because there was a festival in Atlanta, but I always learned about it as like something that I should not talk about. Like it wasn't the thing that I think I've been reflecting most about is like Freddie, something you mentioned, like it was indoctrinated in us that this is a Black thing, but this is American history. This is everything thing. And I'm just starting to see like how much history has divided us as like, no, that's Black history. No, that's women's history. No, that's like European history. Like we're all different. And like the only thing you need to know about is American history, which is written by like white men and people who fetishize the Confederacy. So I think that's the biggest like thing that I've been thinking about is like, no, everyone needs to know about Juneteenth. It's not just about Black people.
Yeah. For sure. And I think too, it's like one of those things where it's like, I almost feel like America treats Juneteenth almost like Kwanzaa, which is like, oh, it's a thing that it's like, it's optional to like, if you want to watch that episode of Rugrats where they like talk about Kwanzaa, like you can, by all means do it. Like that's up to you, but it's like super optional to just like talk about or like even research or have any knowledge about. And both are incorrect. Like you should have some knowledge about, all holidays. But Juneteenth is an actual like a date in American history that we all need to be cognizant and aware of and honor that day. So
yeah, and I feel like I know we didn't say this, and I meant to say Juneteenth is just like June 19th abbreviated. Because June 19th in 1865 is when the enslaved peoples in Texas learned that they were emancipated.
Yes. And then and then I guess just really quickly, so like the traditional social construct of slavery ended in 1865, but there's still so much slavery, like there's illegal versions of slavery happening today. And that includes, even Jim Crow in the 50s and 60s, and then, the war on drugs in like the 70s and 80s, and then mass incarceration. I mean, it all happened just like clockwork. When one thing gets outlawed, when Jim Crow gets outlawed, okay, how else can we control this group of people? Oh, okay, well, if you're considered a criminal, then you can't vote. Oh, okay, so then we need to make sure that we give Black people and Black and brown people less voice to make decisions or to come in power. So let's make sure that we are over policing their neighborhoods. Let's make sure that we are, making sure that their bail amounts are way more than they can afford so that they just sit in jail for however long. You know what I mean? It's just like it's very calculated. So slavery is still a thing. It's just wrapped in a different package.
Exactly. And it's like with the war on drug and with mass incarceration, exactly, Freddie. It's like, how do you take away people's voices? You make it so that they, one, are not even in their homes, and two, don't have a right to vote. And because it's like and it's like, okay, we need Black people, we need brown people to be incarcerated. So we need to make it so that things that they're doing are very criminalized. And so even with the war on drugs, cocaine was prevalent in white spaces, still is, honestly. And so it's like cocaine was, I'm like, if y'all want to put away people that do cocaine, you will have no Hollywood and you will have no startup company. That's what it is.
Yeah.
But basically, so it's like cocaine, expensive, harder to obtain, was mainly used in white neighborhoods. Crack cocaine, cheaper. So then it was more accessible to poorer people, aka Black and brown people. And so then they got crack cocaine in their hands, doing drugs just like everyone else was doing drugs. Should anyone do drugs? No, but everyone is doing them. And so then with crack cocaine, it was the same sentencing for 1 ounce of crack cocaine as it was for 100 ounces of cocaine.
Regular cocaine, yeah.
And so it's like, then of course, if you have 1 ounce of something, and then with the mandatory sentencing, and so then it's like, oh, well, if you have this, then that's automatically 5 years, automatically 10 years, automatically life in prison. There's no nuance to any of it. There's no room for empathy or humanization. And so it's like, with all that in place, then it's like, okay, if you have 1 ounce of crack cocaine, you're done, and you you won't vote.
Hmm.
1
And
ounce.
even like, yeah, 1 ounce, and even, there's just so many, I guess laws in like happening at this time. So like how you said the mandatory sentencing, and then there's also the three strikes rule that Bill Clinton put into effect during his presidency, which made it so, if you get caught three times doing something illegal, then you are in jail forever. However, I mean, but literally, we walk down the street and are loitering. That's considered, you know what I mean? Like, that's considered criminal activity. So that's my one strike. You know what I mean? So literally, like, the amount of inmates, especially Black and brown inmates, just completely doubled and tripled so fast during this time that they had to start building new prisons and like all this stuff. So it's so much. It's so much to
Mm-hmm.
unpack and so
Yeah.
much to learn. And even like, I don't know, I still don't know everything. Chantel, like none of us know
No.
everything that has happened, because there's just so many little sneaky ways that the white people in power have figured out how to twist things so that they can remain in power.
Mm-hmm.
Just with these little things. I mean, even like I'm sure you guys saw on Instagram how um, inmates count towards the population of rural communities, which are largely Republican. So like when you like in terms of like the census and all that stuff. So like inmates can't vote, but their its existence, if they're put in the prison system, regardless of where they came from, where their actual homes are, their bodies are counted as like within the population of rural communities.
I did not know that.
That
Crazy.
that calculates to the electoral power.
Yep.
Yeah. It's crazy.
So it's like say a bunch of inmates came from New York and now they're in Oklahoma, so then Oklahoma can have more delegates because they have more bodies, even though all the people that live in Oklahoma, aka incarcerated people, can't vote.
Yep.
Yeah, and so it's just like there and it's like this is what white supremacy is, it's like this is, and so truly there's so much to learn, and it's like like all the stuff we've been talking about, it's like it's just one example. Like that is one example of white supremacy. Crack cocaine versus cocaine is one example. Mandatory sentencing, one example. It's like all this stuff, and so it's like of course it all leads to mass oppression, and you can't get out of it. If people are being put in jail for selling 1 ounce or having 1 ounce on their body, then say that mom, say that dad is now gone and away, that family unit is torn apart. And so then it's like, how are you building up that family unit? It's just a vicious cycle, and we could go on and on and on. But yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
This was great. So that is Juneteenth.
Yeah, that's
in a 20-minute
Juneteenth in a
nutshell.
nutshell.
I feel like this is our first Juneteenth in America. Like it's not our first for a lot of Americans, but because it's reaching the mainstream, and because I feel like I saw a petition today that has so many so many signatures to make this a official national holiday, like it should be. I feel like this Juneteenth is incredibly significant.
I mean, to reframe that, I think it's like, this is the first time that white people have been like, Juneteenth? That's a thing? I guess I gotta do. Yeah, like I think that it's awful that it took all of us not having like our regular schedules, so having everything cleared aside to be able to like actually make the effort to pay attention to something that we should have been paying attention to the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%. And also, like, I'm grateful that I get to spend this Juneteenth with you guys. You know what I mean? Because it is significant. It's it's terrible that we haven't recognized it until now, and like here we are.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that it does become. I know right now there are 3 states that are not recognizing it as a national holiday, or as a state recognized holiday. It's Hawaii, I think one of the Dakotas.
Yeah, I think it was maybe North and South Dakota, or was it only just one? I can't remember. But yeah, I remember seeing that too.
Yeah. So hopefully this stuff can yeah, it's Hawaii, North Dakota, and South Dakota. Yeah, you're right, Chantal. That do not recognize it. So hopefully that can change by the time next year rolls around. I mean, it would be cool if it could just be a federal holiday, but you know, that's too much to ask these days.
I know, right? I'm like, change comes slow and then all at once, it seems, you know? And so it's
Yeah.
like, I'm hoping that we can, and so it's like, it's important to keep talking about this stuff and to keep learning, you know? It's like, you can't do better until you know better. And so if you now know better, give that to someone else, you know, make sure
Yeah.
that other person also knows. And yeah.
Yeah, faux show. Thank you guys so much for sticking around and listening and taking in everything that we're talking about. Like, it's so important, and we all are passionate about it and care about it, and we, you know, hope that you all too can be passionate and start caring. So, not that you're not caring, but you know, you get it. Okay, I think. Okay, so ladies, do we want to do one last segment or do we want to sign off? Viewers, how are you feeling?
We could do the race, the cat check race, if we want to end it like that with a little, you know.
Yeah, sure.
A little friendly competition between the girls.
I mean, Bones is right there.
Well, then you can't find Bones then.
I will say, okay, sure, let's do it.
Wait, Fred, what were you gonna say? Is Roberta right there?
No, I don't know where she is today.
Oh, okay.
So I might lose today.
That's why it's a race.
Oh yeah, I have no idea where my little son is.
When you were saying some really important, beautiful stuff, Chantel, James was walking behind you, and I was like, "Oh no, should I stop her?"
Yeah. I saw his little squishy boy. I saw him and I was like, "You are interrupting. It is not your time yet."
Who wants to count us down? I think Jen, you count us down.
Yes. Oh, I love cat check race. All right, ladies, on the count of 3. All right, get your little babies. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, there they go. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Well, you know, I'm fine.
Wow.
Oh.
We
have a
already
winner.
have a champion.
A champion.
It's Mar. Oh my god, look at his big old face. Wow, James.
Oh my god. Wow. Okay.
Usually you give
it's
up
funny
on
because Devin and Chantel, you guys have big cats, and then Roberta's like, she's a little tiny. She's not as. Oh. They're all getting cradled.
Look at those
Oh my god.
Oh, it's so sweet.
Oh my god.
It's fun because it's like, this is where we get to see cats like with a person that they genuinely love. Like, I've interacted with all 3 of these cats, and when I see these cats, they're kind of just like, who are you, bitch? We don't get it. But it's like,
we don't get it.
The cats with their person, and like seeing just like how like you can get them close to you, you can actually bring them near your face, you can pick them up. Like, it's very sweet. It's very heartwarming. It's just nice to see some love.
Oh, look at Mars.
Hi, Marzi. He's like, this is my mama.
Listen, I love seeing your kitten's beans, and I think that we're all winners. Even me, who doesn't have a cat. Cool.
Babies.
Bye.
Cool.
Okay.
Happy Juneteenth, everyone.
Happy Juneteenth.
Yes, happy Juneteenth. Let's celebrate it now and every year.
Forever.
Love you guys so much.
Love you too.
Love you all. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Be safe.
Say bye, Mars.